Okay, we're going to rewatch the leaders debate, the English-speaking one from the 25 election.
Live from the atrium of Maison Radio Canada in Montreal, 4 federal leaders will debate for your vote. The leaders are here and ready to go. Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Yves-François Blanchet, and Jagmeet Singh. They will debate the major challenges facing our country, from tariffs to the cost of living, public safety, energy, and leading in a crisis. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, your moderator for tonight's debate. Each leader has agreed to the following: no notes, answer the questions, stay on theme, stay on time. How much each leader speaks will be counted on these clocks, visible to the leaders and to you at home. This is the 2025 Federal Leaders Debate. Well, welcome, leaders. Good to be with you here tonight in Montreal for what I'm sure will be a memorable evening. Our first theme is tariffs and threats to Canada, and we will begin with a round of questions. You will each have a minute to answer, and then we'll go to open debate, and the first question goes to Mr. Carney. Okay, what is the starting point for negotiations, Mr. Carney, with the United States if, as you have stated, our relationship with the U.S. is over as we know it?
Well, first, Steve, may I thank you and also thank fellow leaders for their service to Canada, people at home for taking the time to watch. I just want to underscore the premise to your question, because I think the relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be one of strength.
Oh, that's cool, Joel. That's cool. I write songs. Nice, nice.
It has to show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a...
Is China a like-minded country?
Show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a position of strength in terms of our reaction to the U.S. unjustified tariffs. And that's why we have put in place counter tariffs that have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here at home.
Mr. Poilievre, would you do anything differently?
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, and thank you to our fellow contestants here today. It's an honor to be here. What would I do different? Well, I'll start by what I would do the same. I think we do need to counter the American tariffs with our own to deter this economic aggression. We must make clear that we will always be sovereign and independent. What would I be doing differently? Well, we need to be in a position of strength. The Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws, red tape, and high taxes that have driven $500 billion out of our country into the United States and made us incapable of shipping our resources overseas. That weakness threatens our ability to stand up for ourselves. So what would I do? I would cut taxes, red tape, and approve our resource projects so that we can get our goods to market and bring home the jobs, so we stand up to President Trump from a position of strength.
That's a pretty good answer.
Mr. Singh, you get the next question. Can we trust the United States to work with us on matters such as Arctic sovereignty and defense policy?
I think we've seen, first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. And thanks.
Jagmeet, as we move forward here, I might skip some of the answers from Jagmeet and Blanchet. We'll see. I really only care about Carney's and Poilievre's.
The question, Steve. We've seen what, for a lot of people, feels like a betrayal when we look at the United States. I grew up in a border town. I grew up in Windsor, and we saw how connected we were as a city and as a community. People lived on one side of the border, worked on the other. People traveled back and forth all the time. We're in the automotive capital of Canada, and we knew how important it was to be able to build cars in Canada, but we saw that those cars went back and forth across the border. Seeing what Donald Trump did to attack Canada in this unprovoked way without any justification really felt like a betrayal. And so Canadians now are right to say, well, we don't really trust Donald Trump at this point, and we can't really have a lot of faith in him. So when it comes to our Arctic sovereignty and our security, we need to make decisions that are in our best interest and no longer be so dependent and so reliant on the U.S. And that's what I would advocate for, making sure we are resilient, independent, and less dependent on the United States.
Monsieur Blanchet, for you, what supports would you want to see for industries affected by tariffs, many, of course, of which are in Quebec?
Many of them. First, be all welcome in Quebec and Montreal. You have me because I try not to speak English in Montreal. However, I think we should never underestimate the threat that Mr. Trump poses on Quebec economy and Canada economy and Mexico economy. But we must.
There should be like a bloc. I mean, I guess that's kind of happening right now, but a bloc Albertois. Why is there just a party for Quebec? This never made any sense to me.
Acknowledge the fact that the economy of Quebec is built differently. The challenges are not the same. The necessity for Quebec to have...
If you're going to have this, why don't you have a First Nations leader who's like the leader of a political party as well?
Partly its own voice in the negotiation is important. The difference between Quebec and Canada is very important in terms of economy, but also in terms of identity and language and values.
Yeah, Joel. He is kind of funny, but he's also kind of a moron. Maybe he's not a moron, but he's pretty disrespectful, I would say, to the west of Canada.
And who we are and the way we want to handle immigration. So we have the right to be different. And if this difference is
Yeah, he openly says he's not even trying to win the election.
being respected by whoever becomes Prime Minister of Canada, we will be reliable partners in order to achieve the best possible negotiation and protect ourselves and our economies as partners.
Merci, Monsieur Blanchet. Okay, we now move into open debate, and I'll start it off, Mr. Carney, with you, and then we go from there. Do you still support dollar-for-dollar tariffs, even if they ultimately threaten Canadian jobs and businesses?
No, and in fact, we've already moved off from dollar-for-dollar tariffs. We have to recognize, and I think we all do, the United States economy is more than 10 times the size of the Canadian economy. And the principle in terms of our counter tariffs is to have maximum impact in the United States, as I said a moment ago, minimum impact here. So we have to think about the impact on Canadian businesses. I'll give you one example, if I may. In the auto sector, the way we've designed those auto tariffs is that Canadian automakers, if they maintain
Sorry if I was just eating into the microphone. Sorry if you could hear that.
production here, if they maintain their investments here, when I say Canadian automakers, I mean automakers that have jobs and plants and production in Canada, then they can have lower tariffs on what they ship to the United States. We create a huge incentive for them in order to do that. We also have carved out the Canadian auto parts sector. Last point, I know you're pressed for time, the Canadian auto parts sector, so that it can remain competitive with the United States. We're focused on maximizing Canadian jobs.
I mean, Doug Ford would be probably upset with that answer right now based on Doug Ford's response to the China Carney deal.
Maximizing the harm in the U.S. So that we get them where we need them.
Mr. Poilievre, you want in, then Mr. Singh.
Well, Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you possibly
Spitting facts.
think it's a good idea to give the Americans a continued monopoly on our energy projects when you have seen how much these liberal policies have weakened our country over the last decade?
Let Mr. Carney respond, and then Mr. Singh.
Sure.
If
Yeah,
I
go
may,
ahead.
yes. So let's go to my record. My record is
Who are you talking about? Poilievre, or what do you mean? Needs to pick a lane.
a month-long
John, are you talking to me?
Prime Minister. And this goes to the heart of coming to the Americans with strength, but
If he's not going to be conservative, get out of the seat. Poilievre? Yeah, well, I think he's conservative. I think he is. Like, I actually probably ideologically, I just think he cows to the. Someone tells him, or he has some sort of feeling that he has to continue to try to, like, pander to the elbows up stuff. Oh, Ford. Yeah, Ford is crazy. I don't even know what Ford does that's conservative. Ford just seems like an opportunist that goes wherever the wind is blowing and will just change his mind. Like, he was so brutal on COVID.
Doing the right thing for Canada. Within the first week as Prime Minister, I sat down with all the premiers of the provinces and territories, as well as the leaders of the Indigenous peoples. Got an agreement with all the provinces and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13, first point. Secondly, to commit the federal government to do its part by Canada Day, so free trade in Canada by Canada Day. Thirdly, the federal government to commit with respect to project reviews.
The question was about
Sorry,
pipelines.
I'm getting to it. Thirdly, one project, one review, and relying
That's not
on
possible
provincial.
under
Yes, it is
C-69.
possible under. It is possible on our system.
No,
it
it's
is
not.
the
It's
impact
banned
assessment.
under C-69.
It is agreed on under the impact assessment framework, and we have a cooperation agreement with British Columbia already. We're looking forward to them with the other provinces. We will move
Yes,
forward.
no,
to
I'll
Gotta let
jump in on
okay,
this.
Mr.
Just-
Singh's turn, please.
The
Of course,
anti-development law.
we agree around having a strategic response to the United States. But what I'm concerned about is what we're doing.
It's funny how irrelevant Jagmeet Singh is in this debate. It's actually funny. It doesn't matter. Like, he was so far behind and he did so poorly. Jagmeet Singh is another beauty in Canadian politics.
Here in Canada, we are already seeing threats to our country in that just the threats alone of the tariffs have meant Canadians have lost their jobs. The threats of the tariffs that are in place right now, the impact of those tariffs is that we've lost jobs in steel, aluminum, and the auto sector. People are already losing their jobs. And while, Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did is you had traveled, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains. So you gave a tax cut to millionaires, but you didn't have time to increase the amount that workers get on EI. Right now, workers who are struggling and wondering, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Workers who've lost their job are saying, how do I pay my bills when EI only covers half of a worker's salary? Maybe 40 years ago that would have worked, but right now most workers are spending their entire salary just to pay the bills, to pay their mortgage and their rent, and to put food on the table. So EI is not good enough, and it shows Canadians that you didn't make it a priority to protect those that are impacted by these tariffs, that are threatened because their jobs are lost.
We have not heard from Monsieur Blanchet yet in this segment, so please.
Yeah, Mr. Carney, you are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English. You said in British Columbia in February that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either we wanted it or not. You would use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never do that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers if you do have the agreement of Quebec? However,
Who cares what Quebec thinks? And is Quebec supposed to have a point of view on a pipeline from Alberta to BC? It's probably written in there somewhere, but they should not have any say on that.
that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either
through
we
Quebec.
wanted it or not.
He
You would
should do that. Carney should do that.
use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never
How
do
could Quebec be against that? That's so ridiculous. While they also get equalization payments. How unfair. What a clown world setup.
that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers if you do have the agreement of Quebec? However, I do agree with you. It's important to be very strong in front of Mr. Trump. However, I would keep the dollar for dollar policy. Don't be weak in front of Mr. Trump. And those counter tariffs have to be targeted. You have put out already $2 billion for Ontario auto industry, car industry, and the lumberwood industry in Quebec has already paid to United States $2 billion, and you have not raised one finger in order to help us.
Let's get from Mr. Poilievre and then a response from Mr. Carney.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts.
Wow.
We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline. And now there's this law, Liberal Law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to build another project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this Liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberal team that is now making up your cabinet?
Let's get a response.
Well, let me pick up a couple of points that have been made. The first thing I did as Prime Minister was to cut the carbon tax. That's the first thing. Second thing is made a commitment.
What a great idea.
Yeah, a lot needs to go, Joel. A lot, for sure.
Made a commitment that all proceeds from our tariffs will go to workers and those
Question was
companies
about
most
pipelines.
affected. There were several points
Means
raised.
nothing
and
so far.
If I may, Mr. Steve, if I
Please.
may address, I'm trying to do it quickly because several points raised. All proceeds go to workers and the firms most effective, and those proceeds are considerable. Third thing, I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture, storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation
He hasn't done enough. What, one MOU with Alberta?
agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get First Nations and Indigenous people buy-in. You can do that through the one project, one review window that we put in place at that first ministers' meeting, as well as, if necessary, using emergency powers to fulfill the federal responsibility, but not the unique.
Mr. Poilievre, you want to come back on that?
What you're saying, Mr. Carney, with respect, is a total contradiction. The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the Government of Canada to actually duplicate the
what
same,
Mr. Poilievre is saying is that have no rules,
project.
have no regulation,
have one-stop
no controls
shop.
Mr. Singh,
over any energy
Mr. Singh,
development.
we just
Mr.
got to let
Singh,
him
that's
finish the sentence.
Better than what we're doing right now, Jagmeet. The Prime Minister should have a lot of power. He should just be able to build the thing. What do they think a pipeline is? Like, is a hyperactive, crazy nuclear thing?
Just pollute.
Let's just let him finish his sentence.
That is not true. In fact, Mr. Singh, the reality is we should have strong rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple
the first
levels
time
of
I heard you care about the
referral
environment.
that it takes now 17 years to
that your
get a
position?
major project approved in this country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire
Liberals
G7.
bought a pipeline and
we
built a
cannot
pipeline.
afford
They're
a
pretty
fourth
pro-pipeline.
Liberal term. We need a change, and the Conservative plan for a change will include repealing the anti-pipeline law so we can get our energy to markets other than the United
Mr.
States.
Singh, then Mr.
Well,
Carney.
while these two compete about who's more pro-pipeline, I think what we need to do is, it's clear.
Why is Singh even there?
The Liberals bought a pipeline. They built a pipeline. I don't know what Pierre is complaining about. That's what they did. I think what we need to do, if we're talking about energy in our country, we need to build an east-west grid. Let's use our power as a nation to build a national project that creates good jobs, that strengthens us for the future, where we connect the low-cost energy from jurisdictions and provinces across this beautiful land and have low-cost energy for businesses, for people, so we can build a stronger economy. That's the energy of the future that we need.
Mr. Carney.
3 quick points. First,
A grid?
the pipeline built, yes, TMX built. That's why oil exports up 50% over the course of the last few years. Secondly,
I don't think that's a bragging point,
Mr. Singh is absolutely right about the east-west grid. Grid interconnections, which is part of the energy corridor, huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia have just announced in terms of their steps towards this. This is within our...
Yeah, that's a good point. So far, at least, he just was very adamant on cutting Poilievre off there. I don't know. I almost think Poilievre should have told him to shut up just to go viral.
our grasp.
Monsieur Blanchet, what should we be prepared to concede in our negotiations with the United States?
I want to be back to something that Mr. Carney said. You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's mind with nonsense. Quebec has...
Okay, Blanchette is talking right now. I ordered food. I gotta go get it. I'll just keep the thing.
by
I'll just keep the video going.
law its own environmental review institution, and you cannot, through a federal decision, even through a Quebec government decision, go over the BAP, as we call it. If the BAP says no,
Just say.
it's no.
I know. I know.
Good.
I know.
Let's
but this
keep
is
that in mind.
This is the point. This is, if I may, this is the point. The federal government can do the following, which is to take the decision to abide by the decision of the Quebec BAP. That is within the federal government's power. That is known as cooperative federalism. That's what we need to
And
do.
do you
in a-
understand
this
one
is
other
what-
point
This is
fast?
what we need. This is what we need to do in a crisis.
We have Moïse and then Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah. The building of those pipelines will take at least 10 to 14 years. Mr. Trump will be 90 years old, not president no more,
might-
and somebody
try.
of course, less terrible will be there before you can even dream of having oil through this pipeline of yours.
We're less than a minute to go. Mr. Poilievre, I promised you next.
Listen, after the last 10 years of Liberals blocking pipelines and killing jobs,
Sounds wild when you
we
say that.
actually,
Sounds
we
like-
actually need to get things
that makes
done.
sense.
We need a change, and our Conservative plan for change will repeal the No New Pipelines law. It will create a true one-stop shop, set up shovel-ready zones with pre-permitting so that we can approve LNG liquefaction export plants, mines, pipelines, nuclear plants, and also
said no to that.
hydroelectric dams so that we can generate the power we need to be strong, self-reliant, and stand on our own 2
Can I-
feet for a change.
Last quick word to Mr. Carney.
Okay, quick word. Bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is tariffs, the threats to Canada, how to negotiate. We need these options. We need these options to build domestically, to
Be the heavy guy here every now and then, making sure everybody comes to time.
We've
And
got
I'm keeping an eye
prejudice
as
in
well on making sure that everybody gets rough justice over here. That concludes our first section and our first debate. Up next, affordability and the cost of living.
Our goal is to double the pace of housing construction.
It will lower your bills, build homes you can actually afford.
Il faudra parler des entreprises du Québec, des travailleurs du Québec, des aînés du Québec.
A big, powerful bring it home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building.
Okay, leaders, same idea, one-on-one questions followed by open debate format. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first question this time. Many provinces, including some provinces with Conservative governments, have ambitious housing targets, none of which have been met. Why do you think your housing plan will be any different?
Let me start by talking to the young people of the nation and those who are aspiring to home ownership. You know, it was only 10 years ago you could buy an average house for $450,000. But in the last lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled, rising faster than in any country in the G7. And so now our youth cannot afford a home, and our seniors are worried about being evicted. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising housing costs. We need a change. And our Conservative plan for change will, 1, axe the federal sales tax on new homes. 2, incentivize municipalities to cut their construction taxes to bring houses down in cost by $100,000. 3, sell off federal land for homes. And 4, train up 350,000 young trades workers who can help build those homes. Because you deserve a home, and we're going to make it happen for a change.
Also on the issue of affordability, Mr. Singh, you get the next question. How do you bring down grocery prices in the midst of a trade war?
I appreciate the I appreciate the question. This is a big concern. When I talk to Canadians, they tell me they're really feeling squeezed from the cost of living. That's one of the top things that people tell me about. People are saying, I can't afford to buy groceries. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's just ongoing worry and this feeling of anxiety that can I actually afford the things that my family needs? On top of that, people are worried about the cost of homes. I think those are the two biggest things I hear. So we can do things about this. Other countries have taken concrete steps. We can put in a price cap on food essentials. France has done it, Greece has done it to great success. It's brought down the cost of food significantly in both those jurisdictions. We can also ban corporate landlords from buying up the affordable homes to keep homes that are affordable. We can make things better for Canadians, but it requires having the courage to take on the powerful corporations that are ripping you off, that are price gouging you. And we know that price gouging is one of the major reasons why food prices are going up. You're never going to hear Pierre Poilievre or Mr. Carney talk about the fact that these are the corporations
Thank you,
ripping you
Mr.
off.
Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, I want to ask you about old age security, which will soon cost this country $100 billion annually. We understand you would like to expand it. How would you pay for that?
We would want it to be just for everybody because the Liberals have created a discrimination against elders which are 65 to 75 years old, having 10% less income from federal government than those who are over 75. But the best way to do it is to have everybody pay its fair share in terms of tax, which means that one should not be entitled to hide money in fiscal paradise in order not to pay him or his clients or friends, not to pay billions of dollars in taxes that could be used to help the situation of elders. Those are things which are supposed to be applied to everybody. There are a lot of questions to be answered about that. Other ways to do it is to reduce the pressure on housing price to make sure that the whole budget of elders and families and workers can afford houses which have increased dramatically in price.
Merci, Monsieur Blanchet. That's time for this one. Mr. Carney, I want to ask you about housing, which over the past decade has gone from a problem to a crisis while the Liberals were in power. Is your policy on getting homes built any different from your predecessors, and how?
This is one of the reasons why I entered this contest, because of the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, and the Trump crisis to help fix it. And I would say, look, the housing approach is fundamentally different because we need a fundamentally different approach. We need to build housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. We do need a fundamentally different approach. And with the fundamentally different approach, we can build an entirely new industry. So the question is how? Now, Mr. Poilievre and I agree on some things. Okay? I agree as well on reducing the tax on first-time home purchases as a way to buy. But I am focused on increasing the supply of homes and doing that in a way that uses Canadian technology and modular prefabricated housing, that uses Canadian lumber, including in reinforced timber, and uses Canadian workers. And in all respects, we're scaling up to double the
did I miss anything good?
rate of home building.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. That's time. We now move to open forum here. And Mr. Singh, you get the first comment. Many of you have pledged to cut the GST on many aspects of buying a home. And Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, would you cut the GST on anything else in order to make life more affordable?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the only one on this stage that fought to give people a GST holiday. Interestingly, while the GST holiday helps working class folks, middle class folks, by taking off the GST off essentials, the Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre voted against that. They opposed the idea of giving people, actual folks that need help, a tax break, and would rather give millionaires a tax break, which shows you whose side he's on, which is not surprising. But what is surprising is that Mr. Carney also said that giving people a break on their GST is a bad idea. Mr. Carney, why do you think giving a tax break to capital gains folks that earn more than $1 million is a good idea, but helping a family afford their groceries, helping people...
What's up, Christopher? How's it going? You're good in a crisis. Well, chose to not in Faye. Just arguing with myself.
Afford their bills for their internet, their cell phone, their home heating. Giving them relief to take the GST off those is a bad idea, but giving a tax break to people who really only earn over more than $1.4 million, that's somehow a good idea.
Okay, you went after
That's your numbers.
You went after Mr. Poilievre first, so I'm going to give him the first shot to respond.
Well, Mr. Carney, the reality is that housing costs doubled under the Liberal government. While Justin Trudeau made exactly the same promises that you are now repeating today. He promised that he would double home building. In fact, home building went down. He promised that he'd reduce the cost. In fact, it went up. And here we are. Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home. And our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan for you to own a home and afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you say?
Okay. I know it may be difficult, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're
doing
in
a
new
impersonation of him with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is on results.
It sounded like that was kind of a dig at Trudeau from Carney. Even Carney. It sounded like Carney's making fun of Trudeau there.
And we're
doing a
in
pretty
a
good
new
impersonation of him with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is
That's funny.
on results.
Were you his economic
And so how
advisor?
to drive results in the housing market, you've got to change the model of building. You've got to increase the financing for housing developers, $25 billion on the table for those housing developers, $10 billion for deeply affordable homes, cutting development charges in half, lowering the cost of the building of those homes by 20%, and lowering the emissions and the run costs of those homes by another 20%. This is how you drive affordability. This is
Yeah, from both sides.
how you bring young people back into the housing
You got
market.
Mr.
exactly what
Blanchet
Trudeau
and then Mr.
promised.
Singh.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau. You claim to have a lot of experience in many things, and you know things. Last time we had somebody saying that they knew things, it was the senators, and they killed the law that protected supply management because they knew better than us and were elected by nobody, exactly like you are today. You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one? I heard of nothing. As far as I know, Brexit happened, even if you were against it. You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people to believe you.
Mr. Singh, you wanted it.
Yes, returning to the topic of housing. Now, it's very important. Obviously, we need to build homes that people can afford. Mr. Poilievre had the opportunity to show us what he could do. He was the Minister of Housing under Stephen Harper. And during that time, guess how many homes he built? He built 6 homes during that entire time. This is not something you can trust
False.
to build homes. He built 6
200,000.
homes.
200,000.
And this has been confirmed again and again. He built
200,000.
6 homes. That's it. Now, the problem, though, with Mr. Carney is while he's laid out a plan, the problem is that when he was the chair of Brookfield Investments, this is a company that made a strategic decision to buy up affordable homes in cities like Toronto where people were paying a decent rent. And they purposely bought those homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rents. That is not someone you can trust, sadly, to deal with the housing crisis when, Mr. Carney, you profited off of it.
We're going to get responses here. Mr. Poilievre first, Mr. Carney second.
First of all, Mr. Singh,
gonna hold this up to remind you.
the Toronto
6 right
Star, the Toronto Star
Shut
debunked
up.
your
No, it
falsehoods
was
on
6
that.
homes, and
I
that's the
appreciate
facts.
neither Liberals or NDP are very good with math, but in that
You're
year,
clearly-
the year I
you
was
can
the
count up to
minister, if I
6, which
could,
is great.
the year,
Let's
the year,
let him
the
answer.
year I
Mr.
was,
Singh, let's let him answer.
in the year
It's
I
not
was,
high enough, though.
the year I was minister, we had
I remember this. Jagmeet Singh was a total clown during this debate. That's like the one thing I actually do remember. I might have missed some of that when I was going to get the food, but Jagmeet was a total disruptive clown during this debate. I remember that.
200,000 homes built. And guess what the average price of a home was at the time? $450,000.
And guess what happened
and
at the end of the conservative reign?
one bedrooms rented
doubled.
out for $900. And since that time, housing costs have actually doubled under the Liberals.
They doubled
and
on
now
the
we have
Conservatives too.
now we have Mr. Carney making tens of billions of dollars of spending promises that will
doubled-
ultimately.
Why isn't the moderator telling Jagmeet to shut up? I blame the moderator actually more than Jagmeet, because if Jagmeet's getting away with it,
You as well.
Continue to build bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy in Ottawa. We tried that for 10 Liberal years, Mr. Carney. What we need is to build homes in communities.
Certainly
and
don't
that
need
means
conservatives.
axing taxes on home building and getting the government out of the way so that builders can actually build.
I think-
Mr.
Mr. Carney,
Carney,
can I pick
you
up-
are on housing. We need
can
a
I-
change, and you, sir, are not a change.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to pick up on, I thought that answer was quite revealing. The first thing is that it's an attitude towards housing that absolutely ignores affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, issues with vulnerable people, ignores the rental market, ignores all other aspects of it. So the six are the relevant. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. The six are the relevant.
200,000.
The 200,000 are a different part of the housing market. There are many Canadians. There are many Canadians at different income levels. The second thing it reveals is a misunderstanding, I'll be polite, of how the government's balance sheet can catalyze enormous private investment. And that is what we need to do to solve the housing crisis. It happens to be what we need to do as a whole to address the economic crisis that's been forced on us by President Trump.
Mr. Blanchet?
Yeah. You have spoken much more than I have.
he should have cut off the mic. He should have. I agree with you. I can't prove it, but I think the Liberals cheated. Just a feeling. Well, I don't know. They did foreign interference. That he just ran to do it again. Can't have written proof of that ish.
So I won't ask a question. I will make a statement instead. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you cannot do what you pretend that you are able to do. We just have no proof so far. I'm saying quite clearly that you cannot be entitled to do it alone. You cannot be entitled to hold all the power in your two hands. You cannot go out there and fix things for Canada and Quebec without being seriously checked by serious people. You cannot go out there and speak for Quebec without Quebec having its own strong voice to protect itself and to promote its different economy. So if you want to collaborate, let's say right now that whatever happens, even if minority
So pointless to have this guy on the debate stage.
government happens, you will be a partner with the different Quebec economy and identity, which you have been not interested in for the economic part and not respectful for the identity part.
Let me get Mr. Singh in at this
thank you.
point. Can you tell us what's the first thing you would do to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I've laid out some of those things. I think fundamentally, I'm the only person on stage that not only fought for real relief for people in terms of affordability, I'm the only one that fought for pharmacare that actually makes life more affordable by giving people medication coverage, dental care that gives people more affordability by letting them access their services if you're a senior and a kid. I fought for childcare to make sure people could afford childcare. All measures that Mr. Poilievre voted against, all measures that Mr. Blanchet voted against. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you in Ottawa to actually make life more affordable, you can't entrust all the power to Mr. Carney. He doesn't have a track record of making life more affordable for people, but we do. So vote for a New Democrat, and we'll continue this work to make life more affordable for you, while the Conservatives and the Bloc have voted against those measures to make life affordable, because that's not who they care about. New Democrats are in it for you.
Pierre Poilievre.
The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined. This after 10 years of Liberal tax increases. We can't afford a fourth term of high Liberal taxes. And that's why Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan,
That's a really good line.
shelter combined. This after 10 years. The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
Wow.
This after 10 years of Liberal tax increases. We can't afford a fourth term of high Liberal taxes. And that's why Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan
Your plan
includes
voted
cutting
against every measure to help people
Shut
out.
up,
cutting-
Jagmeet. What did? Oh my! He was doing so bad in the polls. He probably thought he had to like go viral or something. Allons-y, thing that's bending the truth.
income taxes by 15% for the average worker and senior, saving a working couple up to $2,000, rewarding hard work again. Because
How much
hard
do you think
work
childcare
is
costs?
actually being
Dental care
punished.
costs.
Is actually being punished.
This is actually malpractice from the leader or the debate moderator. I would actually kind of consider this borderline election interference. Why? Like this guy's not letting Poilievre talk, and he's only interrupting Poilievre. This is actually a lot worse than I even remember it.
Because of the very high
How is
tax.
Poilievre going to get his message out? This is the one debate, right, in English that there was when Dummy over here is interrupting him every 5 seconds.
Now, the Liberals promised 10 years ago they would lower them. They actually raised taxes on 9 out of 10 Canadians. We need a change in this country because your hard work should once again pay off with a powerful paycheck that buys you an affordable affordable home
you want to save
on a
people
safe street,
$2,000,
and that's what we will deliver.
You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care,
That's
which
false.
is thousands of dollars.
False.
Cut their child care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there. You're going to save people $2,000, but cost them tens of thousands of dollars. That's why you cannot afford Conservatives, and you certainly can't trust the Liberals
Mark
on
Carney's
their own.
turn.
You need New Democrats.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to reinforce that point, and then I'll respond to Mr. Blanchet. Childcare in this country, $3,000 to $10,000 a year for a family, depending on where you live.
Province, jurisdiction.
Depending on where you live, that's what's being saved there. $800 per trip to the dentist. We've expanded dental
Province,
care to 8
jurisdiction.
million Canadians.
Because we
8
forced-
million Canadians.
because New Democrats were there.
Pharmacare. These are fundamental issues for affordability. We're talking about affordability and taking them off in order.
That's why you
to
need
cut
New Democrats.
tax.
That's not what I've said.
And in
I will be
terms
cutting
of
income taxes
working with Quebec,
for Canadians.
yes, absolutely. Throughout the short time I've been Prime Minister, working directly with the Premier of Quebec, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Minister of Finance are from Quebec. Quebec and Quebec issues, whether it's
Why
supply
haven't you answered
management,
Mr.
language,
Legault's letter? He asked 5 things in the letter. He reduced his expectations.
We're talking about-
And you did not even answer him. And tonight, you are so much in love with Quebec.
Steve, the question that Canadians have to ask.
Why vote for
whether-
Conservatives?
why-
We're going to save
why-
you
why-
$2,000
He's got
or
the
cost you
Mr.
tens of
Singh.
thousands.
Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor. Come on.
The question you have to ask is, after a decade of Liberal promises, can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a 4th term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that
That's
you are
painful.
any
Oh, wow. That's
different
painful.
than the
Okay.
previous 10 years of Liberal
25
government?
seconds left in this segment for you.
Why
to-
don't they let Poilievre talk? This is so like when Poilievre said that wasn't that aggressive of a statement.
You are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that
That's
you are
painful.
any
Oh, wow. That's
different
painful.
than the
Okay.
previous
What
10
is- I think Blanchette's saying like that's painful or something. Why can't Poilievre say that? That's like a pretty mild criticism. Taxes are effing gangster, criminal. Well, they're very high in Canada, that's for sure. I showed my mom the Christmas picture of Carney and Poilievre. I said Pierre looked like a psycho.
years of Liberal
25
government.
seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump. So first and foremost, we've got to get that right.
That's not true. That's still not true today. Oh man, he won by saying that. Holy crap, were Canadians ever like brainwashed and still are. That's not true. It's everything Polyev was talking about there. It's the high taxes. It's the ridiculous rules that don't allow for major projects.
Secondly, we need to do it in a way that brings everyone along together. That means preserving pharmacare, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our whole social safety.
Intrusion in Quebec jurisdiction over and again. I like if we're any better than we are.
The clock is
there
on zero.
one thing Canadians can do that Quebecers cannot do? You are doing intrusions in our jurisdiction with our money, pretending you are better, and most of the time you try to copy what we did with our own money against us. What's that as a policy? Don't you have your own things to care about?
That really is time for this segment. I wanted to be polite and let everybody
Nobody knows or cares what Blanchette was even saying.
finish their
But
points,
I'm
but
far
we
behind,
got to move
so
on.
I took the liberty.
Thank you. Okay, that ends section 2. Up next, public safety and security.
Fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong.
Keep crime, drugs, stolen cars, and other illegal substances out of our country.
We're going to invest in our borders, and that means hiring more border officers.
Resources are in short supply, not enough staff. This is not the nice way to treat people who come to our border.
Okay, same format, one-on-one questions and then open debate. Monsieur Blanchet, you get to go first in this one. Public safety and security. For a lot of people, that means the fentanyl crisis. I'd like to know what you could contribute to ending that crisis in this country.
The fentanyl crisis is a very serious issue, which is a bit less important in Quebec than it is in British Columbia. I think the whole border thing is the real issue. Immigration is a very important issue for Quebecers. Immigration has to be dealt with in an orderly fashion. Our borders are not dealt with in an orderly fashion. The rules are not respected. The rules are unclear. Some rules even invite people to hide for 2 weeks illegally before coming out. Some things has to be done. The situation of one person asking for asylum may take as much as 4 years without us reducing the number in order to deal with them in a human way. The services for every citizen in Quebec are being reduced because we cannot afford the fact that we are receiving much more people in Quebec from this specific type of immigration than we can afford, and we cannot teach them French.
That's time, Monsieur Blanchet. We can, of course, return to the immigration issue during open debate, should you choose to. Mr. Carney, question for you. The Liberal gun buyback policy, not considered a success by many people. Reviving it is in your platform.
Yeah.
Why would it work this time?
Yeah, I think, well, what we've seen with that policy is some success at the commercial level, but not at the individual level, because it hasn't been, in my opinion, it hasn't been organized properly, and it needs to be organized properly. And instructed the Minister of National Security and Public Safety in order to do that. So part of this is a different focus of government, a focus on results, a focus on clear milestones in the short term. Let me make a broader point, though, on gun, which is that we have a problem with guns coming over borders, which is why we've tightened our borders. We have an issue, though, with a gun industry that is continually coming up with new forms of assault rifles, mass killing machines. We banned over 2,000 of these. Every single time there has been a vote in the House of Commons on gun control, Mr. Polyev has voted against it. You can't be tough on crime unless you're tough on guns.
Mr. Polyev, you can come back on that in the open debate if you want to, but my question for you in this segment is, Indigenous people are statistically overrepresented in our corrections system. Are you concerned that your tough on crime platform will make that worse?
I'm concerned that Indigenous people are disproportionately the victims of crime. I give you the example of a wonderful group of Indigenous people who came under attack in Saskatchewan, and many of them were murdered. Killer was out of jail after 60 prior convictions. This is the result of 10 years of liberal laws that allow the same offenders to be released dozens and dozens of times, even when it's known they are a danger. We can't risk a fourth liberal term of soft on crime policies. We need a change. And the Conservative plan for change We'll bring in a 3 strikes you're out law. 3 convictions for serious crimes, you go to jail for at least.
That buyback program they were talking about, I could hear it. I was just over in the other room. There's some liberals now are saying, oh, we don't need that because they think that America's about to invade and people need the guns. I don't know if you've heard that, but pretty crazy.
At least 10 years, maybe for life, no chance of parole or bail. We will bring in life sentences for traffickers of fentanyl, human beings, and guns, and we will secure our borders to keep the illegal guns
Thank you, Mr.
out.
Poilievre. That's time. Mr. Singh, your question is about the RCMP, because you've got RCMP reform in your platform. What, in your view, is the problem with the RCMP?
Well, some of the basis for this is the concern that's been raised in more rural communities and northern communities that there have been some serious concerns about violence or inappropriate use of force when it comes to the execution of their duties. We want to make sure that we've got a top-tier police force that provides security and safety to those communities in a way that's sensitive and understanding of the communities they're serving. I also think what's very important is for Indigenous communities, Indigenous policing. This is an area of deep concern. I think everyone in our country should be safe. You should be able to be safe at home, safe when you go to work, safe if you take public transit, safe for your kids to be able to play in the local playground. And that's something I'm committed to. The other area that I'm focused on when it comes to public safety is making sure we prevent crime before it happens. And that's why we want to see increased investments in our border security. We saw under the Conservatives, they cut 1,100 border officers in one day. So that prevented our ability to keep our borders safe. That stops those materials from
Mr.
coming
Singh,
into the
that's
country.
time. Not sure it was about the RCMP, but maybe we can get back to that during the open debate segment, which we go to right now. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first word on this one. And it sort of dovetails on the last answer you gave, which is you have pledged to be the first prime minister in this country to use the notwithstanding clause, setting aside charter rights of, as you call them, multiple murderers. Why do you think that's necessary?
To be clear, I want to uphold the charter rights of Canadians under Section 7 to life, liberty, and security of the person. Right now, that right is violated by multiple murderers who are given discounts. The case in question was a gentleman who went into a mosque and shot dead 6 innocent worshipers. He got, according to this ruling, only one 25-year sentence, meaning he can be out in his 50s. He only serves 4 years for every murder that he carried out. That is outrageous. And I will use the constitutional powers that are created for this purpose to ensure that mass murderers stay in maximum security penitentiary for life. They will only come out in a box. We will also pass tough new laws that prevent repeat offenders from getting out. If you commit 3 offenses under the 3 strikes law I propose, you will not be allowed out of jail until you prove that you are drug-free, that you are behaved perfectly, and that you've learned an employable skill, and you've served a 10-year sentence. We cannot allow liberal crime and chaos to go on terrorizing our communities. What we need is a real plan for change so that we can bring back the safety and the security that Canadians used to take for granted.
Let me get Mr. Carney to respond to that. Do you think that's an appropriate use of the notwithstanding clause of the Charter?
I think that one of the core responsibilities of the federal government, Prime Minister, is to defend the fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians. And those fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians are outlined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is 43 years old literally today. I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada. In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage, politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights. And the issue in using by the federal government, I'll stop here, is not where you start, but where will you stop?
Mr. Poilievre, I should get Mr. Poilievre on that. Is it a slippery slope if you use it in this case?
I must say, I would be quite interested too, because Mr. Carney said that he didn't want us to use the notwithstanding clause before adopting a law. And yesterday he said that he felt that it was wrong to use the notwithstanding clause after a law is adopted. So if we cannot use it before and we cannot use it after, it means that Mr. Carney believes that we should never use it, but it is very important. And the Ford case made it clear. The Constitution says how it should be used, but never how or what we will do with it, because it's the prerogative of the provinces. So, do you want the Supreme Court to overrule another judgment of the same Supreme Court because you don't like it? Because that would be being the hell of a politician as you define them.
Well, let me just start by saying, first of all, thank you. I just started by saying, let's not let Mr. Poilievre get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty. Obviously, that is not a special position that he's taking. Everyone agrees that horrible crimes should have horrible sentences. Judges are equipped to do that, so don't let Mr. Poilievre's rhetoric confuse people. Obviously, everyone agrees that if someone does something horrible, they should pay a horrible price for it. There should be appropriate sentence that's put in place by a judge. But what I'm concerned about is all of what Mr. Poilievre is talking about is after the fact. Now, there's heinous things that happen, and there needs to be severe penalties put in place. But we also need to keep communities safe. And that's what my focus is. Well, how do we stop crime before it happens? Much of the violent crime that's committed is committed by illegal handguns and firearms that come across the border. Now, Mr. Poilievre has admitted that as well, that it is illegal handguns and illegal weapons that are used in violent crime. So our plan is, let's stop those illegal weapons getting into our country in the first place. And the way we do that is by having stronger border security officers and having more people on the border. Mr. Pierre Poilievre, when he was in power in the Conservatives, they cut the number of border officers. They reduced the number, weakening our borders.
Keeping an eye on
you
time
can't
here.
trust them
Let's
to
get
do
back
these
to
type of
Mr.
things.
Poilievre on the issue of whether, in using the notwithstanding clause under these circumstances, would be a kind of a slippery slope and encourage politicians to use it more.
No, we will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets. I don't think you appreciate, sir, the chaos that is unfolding in communities. In Toronto right now, the police have been forced to tell people to just let the thief steal the car. When they break into the house, just take the keys. Just let them take the keys so that you don't get hurt. People are living in...
This is true. That was crazy. Okay, I'm going to do a... I'm just going to do a little news recap here. Let's go take a look at some of the news of the day. Let's take a look at Laura Babcock.
When you care about current affairs, it's on the O Show.
Welcome to the O Show, Canada's pro-democracy podcast. I'm your host, Laura Babcock, and I want to thank all of you around the world who are listening to this podcast and supporting Canada and our sovereignty. It is so critical at this moment, and after the weekend we've had, it is even more so. If you're watching the YouTube podcast, you can tell I haven't slept for good reason. I had to watch all the Sunday shows, so you didn't have to out there, and it's pretty dire, but we will
Didn't sleep because you're watching Sunday shows? What?
get to all of it, including not just Trump's latest freak out and his letter to Finland, but also, or to Norway rather, but also we're going to talk about the impact of the China deal across this country. There's so much going on. And of course, we are sending apparently our soldiers, our brave men and women, to go to Greenland. So boots on the ground for Canada, which is a total game changer in the conversation. I want to thank all of you who subscribed. Let's get to 10,000 subscriptions by the end of this month, because that changes the algorithm and it pushes more people towards this pro-democracy conversation. And also thank you so much, all of you who are excited about the O Show merch store that's coming online soon. Woo! So we can show our love of democracy and, of course, our O Show community here that we're building. I
can't wait.
Did try to go through all 450 plus messages from you from the last show just on YouTube. But of course, there are hundreds of others, if not thousands, across all social media. So if I don't get to them all, just know that I try to at least look at them. And we really appreciate building this pro-democracy conversation. So I'd like to introduce a new guest to the pod. Very brave to come on a Monday after Trump threatened the end of peace, and that is Eric Lombardi. Eric writes for The Hub and is a contributor to the Toronto Star. And I met Eric through Twitter, where I like to watch for people's commentary and like to see people who I think are adding interesting ideas to the conversation. And on that note, on Wednesday, we are going to have a thought leader from Finland who's going to be joining us. Not sure what time it's going to be for Joni when he comes on the program, but he's coming on to talk to Canada. Can't wait for that. And on Friday, former ambassador, and of course, a member of the Conservative Party of Canada, Chris Alexander, the former ambassador to Afghanistan, is going to be joining me to talk about this because, you know, God forbid we're in World War III, but I certainly want to talk to somebody who knows more about the world than I do. And
come on, let the other guy talk.
This morning, because let's start with what is the most ridiculous, but in a sense, the most alarming of all news. And that is that Donald Trump didn't just write a stupid, post on his Truth Media. He actually wrote a letter, like a formal letter to Norway, complaining that because he didn't get the Nobel Prize, which of course has nothing to do with the government of Norway, that he no longer feels he has to focus purely on peace. I mean, when I first saw that, I thought, well, he called it the War Department illegally without Congress approval. So I never thought that peace was the objective of the former Department of Defense, now War Department. But now he's just outright saying it. You didn't give it to me, even though he got it given to him by the person who did receive it. What a ridiculous.
Okay, let the guy talk. This guy's just sitting there like
prelude to war, to say not only
does the other
am
guy
I
ever
invading
talk?
Greenland potentially because I'm mad at the decision by the Nobel Committee, but also he said very alarmingly on a post Saturday night or Saturday morning that that basically if there are going to be NATO troops in Greenland, that this will affect peace. You couldn't get more louder, threatening drumbeats of war than we're hearing out of this Mad King president, but that's my opinion. I have no idea what yours is, so tell me what you think about everything I just mentioned.
Bro, that was 4 minutes.
Well, I'm as concerned as you are, and I actually think that Trump has often weaponized, let's call it ridiculousness, as a way to actually be disarming. And so when we see statements like this, it allows us to distract ourselves about just how silly or unbelievable it is, and it actually almost makes it a joke. And that, I think, that undermines our ability to take what's occurring seriously. And so when we have conversations not just about Greenland sovereignty, but what does that mean as a proxy for what risks we should be considering to Canada, I think that we should look at the subliminal message. And what we're hearing, and it's even direct, is that America believes the Western Hemisphere of the Americas are its domain to control. And we are under, I think, a fairly serious threat to our sovereignty if we don't take what we're seeing seriously. With respect to Greenland, we have had indications from our own government that we believe that NATO Article 5 still applies to Greenland, and that we've been steadfast in supporting our allies in Denmark and in Europe, that Greenlanders have sovereign rights to determine their own future, irrespective of what America wants. But what I think is important is Canada needs to be looking at what's happening right now, because it has only been 1 year into this administration, not even quite 1 year. And I think I can say for all of us that this has almost been worse than we expected, and none of us were expecting that this administration would be good. And so we need to consider possibilities that were unfathomable even a year ago, and it takes time to prepare. And frankly, Canada's been in a position where we've had, frankly, the luxury to ignore some of the key problems of state and defense. And I think we're all waking up to.
Yeah, because Canada was underfunding NATO for so long and just relying on America being so nice and so powerful.
The fact that we need some serious changes, not just to protect our sovereignty, but to fix systems that have been undermining our culture and belief in the country.
I think it's beautifully said. I posted earlier, this would be funny if it wasn't an absolute threat to our sovereignty and to our world. He's a lunatic. And by lunatic, I actually mean the literal sense of, he seems to be moved by the phases of the moon, right? Like there's no predicting.
Well, what scares me more than his lunacy is the enablers behind him that have power. And we can dismiss them as, being dumb all we want. These are not dumb people. They are evil people.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to be eyes wide open about what we're dealing with.
No, that's well said. They're not dumb. They wouldn't be in the halls of power at that level if they were dumb. I mean, when I look at Levitt, the press person, she's the best one I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
She lies with a speed that, is unbelievable, but she's very, very good at her job. And I say that as a PR person who's trained many people, and I've done some of those gigs over the years. And for all the people out there who told me I spoke too fast on Friday, I will agree. I get pretty passionate. Our Quebec viewers love it. I think it might be because I grew up in Quebec and they speak pretty fast in Quebec. But I do have a lemon ginger tea, so I will try to slow down. My husband was actually at a party on Sunday, and someone mentioned to him that I speak too fast. So I'm going to do my
Hi there, and welcome to Power Play. I'm Vashi Kapelos in Ottawa on this Monday. Tonight, Trump gunning for Greenland.
The president is looking at Greenland as a strategic asset for the United States. We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to anyone else.
European leaders attempt a show of sovereign force against U.S. interests in Greenland. As Prime Minister Mark Carney arrives in Davos, Switzerland, Trump will be there too. We've got a top panel with military, political, and diplomatic experience on what the U.S. president's obsession with Arctic defense could mean for Canada's northern shores. Then, is the bromance over?
I found out about this deal, and the auto companies found out, by the way, a few hours before it was announced. So much for the partnership.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford dismayed
I don't mind that. Who cares what Doug Ford thinks?
after Prime Minister Carney inks a deal to let 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles into the country in exchange for agricultural tariff relief. Premier Ford's D.C. Representative David Patterson will be here on that coming up. Plus, we've got our front bench to break down the politics of both of those stories. Brian Gallant, Lisa Ray, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie are all standing by. They're going to be here a little bit later on in the show. First, though,
That might actually be kind of interesting.
Prime Minister Mark Carney there touching down in Zurich, Switzerland, on his way to the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he's set to continue pitching more Canadian trade to global markets. But overshadowing the big business summit, Donald Trump zeroing in on Greenland, arguing only America can defend the Arctic nation. And in text messages to Norway's Prime Minister, Trump intimated his Nobel Peace Prize snub is part of what's driving that focus on Greenland.
I don't know anything about the president's letter to Norway, and I think it's a complete canard that the president will be doing this because of the Nobel Prize. The president is looking at Greenland as a strategic asset for the United States. We are not going to outsource.
You think this is real? I'm going to check out the Poly Market odds that the USA gets Greenland. Let's see. Poly Market, US takes over. So it's actually quite low. Will Trump acquire Greenland before 27? 20% chance. Trump Greenland deal signed by March 31st. 34%. Will the U.S. invade Greenland in 2026? 12% chance. Pretty low. Will Greenland vote for independence in 26? 14%.
Source our hemispheric security to anyone else. Last one. I think it would be very unwise.
Threats there being rejected both by Canada and European allies. Take a listen.
It's a serious situation, and we're concerned. We're concerned about this escalation. The future of Greenland, decisions about the future of Greenland are for Greenland and Denmark to decide. And the security of Greenland, security is first and foremost for them, but very much falls within the responsibilities of NATO.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. That right is fundamental, and we support it.
And back in this country, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre posting to social media, it is unacceptable for the U.S. to seize the territory of a sovereign country, including by threatening tariffs on other NATO countries. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and we support its territorial integrity. The statement goes on to say Conservatives support NATO and Canada's obligations as a NATO member. Canada should strengthen the NATO alliance and rebuild our own forces in the Arctic to combat threats also coming from China and Russia and to protect our seas, skies, and soil. This weekend, Donald Trump, as you heard Mr. Poilievre reference there, did announce 8 European countries who have come out against American control of Greenland will face a new 10% tariff as of February. The countries facing Trump's new tariffs all sent handfuls of soldiers to Greenland as part of NATO military exercises. A senior federal government source here says the Prime Minister is weighing a similar decision on the part of Canada for a very small contingent of soldiers to join a future exercise as soon as later this week. Here to unpack all of that, and there is a lot to unpack, 10% tariff as of February. The countries facing Trump's new tariffs all sent handfuls of soldiers to Greenland as part of NATO military exercises. A senior federal government source here says the Prime Minister is weighing a similar decision on the part of Canada for a very small contingent of soldiers to join a future exercise as soon as later this week. Here to unpack all of that, and there is a lot to unpack, former top soldier chief of the Defense Staff, retired General Tom Lawson, former Conservative Defense Minister Peter MacKay, and former Canadian Ambassador to NATO, Carrie Buck. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for making time for the conversation tonight. Mr. MacKay, I wanted to start with you. What does it say in principle that one NATO ally is talking about another in the way we are hearing President Trump reference Greenland?
Well, it's quite shocking, to say the least, and appears to signal that the president is wildly off in all directions when it comes to Greenland. The discussion around either buying or in some way annexing and even using military force is so completely counter to everything that the NATO alliance represents, not to mention, Vashi, the impact that it would have on NORAD from a Canadian perspective because of this close alliance that we have with Denmark, with all of the NATO allies. And you know, from a political standout, the fallout that could occur in terms of more tariffs, and we're suffering tariffs now, as you know, but also being added to the list of 8 who have spoken out, And Canada participating in some sort of a military exercise would no doubt lead to further repercussions from the Trump administration.
I know it's hard to project or try to predict what's going to happen next, Ms. Beck, but in this moment, a lot has been said, right? Like I pointed out to Mr. McKay, between one NATO ally to another in the form of Denmark and in the United States, not to mention all the countries that Mr. McKay just referenced now are facing new threats of tariffs. What do you think it's, as someone who represented Canada to the alliance, what do you think it's doing to it?
Well, it could kill the alliance if Trump were to make good on his threats to seek to annex Greenland, including by using military force. Even now, there's damage being done to the alliance because it's shaken the notion that the U.S. would weigh in to protect all NATO allies. Instead, it's seeking, for the first time in American history since before the Second World War, it's actually threatening to attack a NATO ally. China, but more importantly, Russia, must be just delighting in this rift within NATO that President Trump has created for reasons that escape me, to be honest. There's no imminent threat on Greenland. There certainly is a need to bolster Greenland's defense in anticipation of potential Russian military action sometime down the road, but not imminent. But NATO's been doing that since I was at NATO 2015 to 2018. They've been doing more, exercising more. NATO allies have been exercising more in Greenland precisely to deter a Russian threat.
General Lawson, I think, you know, certainly we've heard, like we heard from that clip in Mr. Bessent, you know, was referencing sort of the feeling from the White House that this is a strategic asset. But there have also been points at which President Trump has not ruled out, you know, not just economic force or tariffs, but actual military force. And that happened as recently as today when NBC News, in a phone call interview, asked him about using force. His only response to that was no comment. What do you take from that?
Well, I think it is unlikely that the president will actually land troops in an aggressive fashion in Greenland, but I don't think it matters too much. I think there's such damage being done to the point that both the minister and Kerry Buck just made. I think it's drawn a huge focus off of where that focus should be. As Kerry Buck said, the Russians will be celebrating right now because space is being given for them to prosecute their illegal and horrific war against Ukraine at a very time that you know, NATO, including the U.S., should be laser focused on what's happening there. That's an existential threat that could come to bear on NATO. You know, this thing that was kind of wistful of several months ago is now turning into a focus of NATO. And if you're into conspiracy theories, which I'm not, you might suggest that Trump, that's the whole point of what Trump is doing here.
Mr. McKay, I was listening to your comments to my colleague Michael Couture in our national newscast, and you were sort of talking about, like, what role can Canada play? Is there something that can be done to bring the temperature down on this? And you had reflected that, and please do correct me if my interpretation is wrong, but that there could be a role for Canada here in trying to do just that. And I had met with a bunch of diplomats today, all of European allies who were here in Canada, but saying, you know, particularly with Davos coming up, the president's there, the prime minister's there may be a way for Canada to make a case for increased resources up there that helps dial down the temperature. What kind of possibility exists in that space from where you sit?
Well, I want to be optimistic but realistic, Vashi, and I think that given the opportunity for a face-to-face meeting by the Prime Minister with President Trump at Davos, this, as you said in your lead-in, will sort of overtake other important discussions. And just picking up on General Lawson's point, not only Russia but China are looking at this situation with glee and saying, you know, from a Putin perspective, well, how is this any different than what we are doing in Ukraine? For China, it's Taiwan and others of their neighbors in the Asia-Pacific.
Christopher, what's up, bro? Rebel News, Mr. Sunshine Baby, Jasmine, Unacceptable Fringe, Frank Wagner. I don't know who that is. I know everyone else, but that's cool. Frank. Let's see this guy, Frank Vaughn. This guy?
I'm Frank Vaughn. It's August 14th, 2025. And I know I said I was going to get into I'm Frank Vaughn. It's August 14th, 2025. And I know.
Is this the guy you're talking about? Probably. Frank Vaughn, yeah, cool. Very cool. I've never heard of this guy, but got good hair. I'm trying to get it set up, Chris, so I can get like have people call in. I think that'd be fun. I'll definitely do that. I'll probably be able to do that pretty quick. I think I'll use this StreamYard thing. Looks pretty easy. Callers enter a backstage. Zoom and OBS if you're. That would be unique on YouTube. No one does that. People, yeah, but probably not in Canada. I think you're right in Canada for sure. People do it though, but that I've seen, but they're more American people. I think that'd be fun. See this StreamYard.
Today we're talking about how to invite guests to join you on screen during your stream. A guest is considered anyone you want to have on screen with you. So this could be...
Chris, you want to come on stream? Just kidding. I wanted this set up. Man, another day if you want though.
A guest speaker or a co-host. Once you've scheduled an upcoming stream, you can click these three dots and then click invite a guest. This lets you copy a link and send out to the guests you want to have join you in your studio. Now remember, don't share this link publicly because anyone will be able to join you in your studio. And we only want the people who you want to have on screen join you in your studio. So I copy this link and send it to my guests. You can select the option to click on Gmail, email, or Messenger to send this link to your contacts that way. On the free plan, you can have up to 6 people on screen, and that includes yourself. On the paid plans, you can have up to...
Yeah, people don't have to be on camera with this. I don't really care about... Like, I think it's just more fun to talk. Like, I'll be on camera, and I am ugly. Like, I'd be open to having the camera thing, but I'm more interested in just being able to hear them and then just talk to them. No camera, no phone. Yeah, I don't even know that you don't even really need that with this, I don't think. I think it's pretty easy to set this up. I'll try to do this and then try to pull some people in. Talk about Alberta independence or talk about whatever they want to. I think it would be pretty cool.
10 people on screen. You can also share these instructions for your guest if they've never been on a StreamYard stream before. Once your guest clicks on this link, they'll see a similar...
Alex Jones does it all the time for the last 30 years. This stuff, like these callers,
microphone and camera test page as you saw. Once everything looks good and they click enter the studio, you'll see them join your studio backstage right next to your thumbnail, like this. They're backstage when they join, so you still have to add them onto the screen at any time by clicking them like this.
Okay, so they could do that. That'd be cool. But I would just have a policy like you don't have to do that. You can just come on and not show your face.
The second way to invite a guest is by clicking the invite button from inside the studio. This is the same link that we already got from the dashboard. It's just another place. It might be easier for you to access this link and send it to your guests. Now you can have a different amount of people in.
A lot of other streamers I know use Discord. So that if I don't have a Discord though, and then they go on there, and then if they join the Discord room that I'm like speaking in or whatever, then they're on stream. But I'll probably not do that right now because I don't want to set up Discord and yeah.
Inside the studio versus the people who are on screen. So like I already mentioned, you can have 6 on screen on the free plan and 10 on screen on the paid plans, but you can actually have 10 people backstage on both the free and the basic plans. Whereas on the professional plan, you can have up to 12 people in the backstage area. Remember, only 10 people can be on screen on that pro plan, but you can have 2 people waiting to be switched in and out if you're doing a dynamic talk show. Now, a great feature of StreamYard is that your guests don't need to download anything. They don't even need to sign up for an account.
Yeah, that's the cool part. That's the best because then people can actually come on.
All they do is click on your link, make sure they're using Chrome, and they can enter your studio. It's as easy as that. Your guests can also share their screen. They can share videos, but you as the host have to approve everything that they share. Inviting guests to your stream is an amazing way to grow your audience. If your guest's willing to share your show on their channels, their pages, you'll be able to almost double your audience count. Now you're ready to invite a guest to your next stream. Let us know if you have any questions by going to.
I'm off to bed. Oh, good luck. Good luck, bro. Have a good sleep. You'll crush the interview. Yeah, all the best, man. See you later.
But to your question, for the Prime Minister to say, look, President, we're willing to do more in the Arctic, and we have signaled that already, and Kerry's right, all NATO countries, Arctic countries, including now Sweden and Finland, are putting their attention to this, including this proposed Arctic maneuvers. Now, Canada does that religiously every year, the Op Nanook. But to speak to that, to the President, let's turn this from a U.S. going it alone, with the unthinkable scenario of being up against other NATO countries, and say, let's lock arms and actually do some significant NATO exercises in the Arctic, in and around Greenland, in and around other parts of the Arctic, other Arctic nations participating. Let's turn the tables, if you will, on Donald Trump's sole fixation on American expansionism and say, if you are truly concerned about Russia and China, let's come up with a plan to do so in unison with Arctic nation countries, with NATO countries, or more specifically through NORAD. And the institutional connective tissue is already there, not to mention the fact that the Americans have a base in Thule, northern Greenland, or now Pifnik, I believe it's known as.
Ms. Buck, what are your thoughts on, not just that possibility, but sort of what's unfolding right now, which is, handfuls of soldiers taking part in these exercises from European countries, Trump threatening tariffs on those countries, Canada mulling, sending, a small number as well. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you have to put those exercises in context. So the exercises of this past weekend, really small numbers. They were a follow-on to a much bigger exercise that happened last September involving the same European allies, 550 troops, air-to-air refuelers, frigates, etc. And Canada also participated last January in some exercises in Greenland. So what's happening this weekend was pre-planned. It was part of a glide path, a continuous round of joint military exercises in Greenland to send that message to Russia, as I said earlier. So President Trump has taken it as a signal to the U.S., and so maybe fortuitously or unfortuitously, it is a signal to the U.S. to change his risk calculus. But the thing right now is to lower the temperature. These exercises are normal. They're not a threat to the U.S., and anything you want to do in the Arctic, we also want to do in the Arctic. And we can't, none of us can do it alone, including the U.S., as the minister said, shoulder to shoulder, locked arms, the Arctic 7 will work together to deter Russia, China, and other threats, including economic threats. So I think there's a really compelling argument, but it's not just about President Trump. There's interesting maneuver in the Senate. A bipartisan bill's been introduced to stop President Trump from attacking a NATO ally through either military threats of annexation or other forms of coercion. The bill's just been launched. You know, we'll see how it goes. But there are a lot of people in the U.S. who think that this really is running against U.S. interests, and diplomacy has to also use those levers as well.
Last word to you, General Lawson, your assessment of those military exercises and sort of all of the, I guess what you think the speculation about additional representation there from a military perspective is really all about.
Well, I think there's something very important happening there. And although I agree with the minister that it would be ideal if one-on-one our Prime Minister